Hello everybody. How are we all? Individual. Okay, so I am Alastair Taylor. This slide says, and also hopefully this slide says. Sure of me. Okay, good. Beautiful. Excellent. I'm a web designer by trade. During the day, I like to use my skills for evil. For the past 5 years, I've been working in the automotive and alcohol industries, killing people one people at a time. Next, I'm going to move on to the tobacco and firearms industries. But I like to, in my evenings and weekends, try and do a little bit of good for nothing. Hey. There'll be more bad jokes as we go through. So, good for nothing. Well, it's the network that I try and do some good through. It's not of my own creation as well, point out first of all. So as a concept, it does pretty much what it says in the tin. It's about people getting together and trying to do a bit of good for nothing. In a bit more detail, it's a community of thinkers, doers, makers, tinkerers. So that could be using their skills, which is anything from design, technology, marketing, business, art, anything we really want to get involved. And using those skills to help accelerate the work of, well, what we say here is cause-led change makers, but basically anybody looking to do some social good. So whether that's entrepreneurs, social enterprises, charities, so on and so forth. And we get together in gigs, short gigs, where we try and do something to help these guys out. Shorter explanation, just people who want to have some fun using their skills to help causes they believe in. And that's what it's all about. Sorry. Easier to click from here. So, it was started by these two guys, Dan Burgess and Tom Fan, down in London. So they'd been attending a series of lectures called the Do Lectures back in 2010. And I come back from that really inspired and really full of enthusiasm, but had that kind of horrible Monday morning dread about, well, we're just going back to our horrible day jobs where we use our skills to sell more shampoo, which is how they put it. So they started to think of a way that they could use their skills and get their friends to use their skills to do something a little bit more important in the world. So create a community that could have a positive impact. So they came up with this idea of good for nothing. So rallied around their friends, colleagues, their wider network, and got a few causes that they believed in. And in their first 24-hour, I suppose you could call it a hack, but trying to avoid that word, did some good for nothing. And this is the format it usually takes. So we get together on a Friday night, have some drinks, pizza as well, it seems to be essential for these events. And you organise against briefs that are basically set out for these ventures, these challenges that we want to help accelerate. And then the next day is pretty much bang on, just doing as much as you can towards these briefs to hopefully have a final product at the end of that day. There's a few rules that they try and stick by in a good for nothing gig. 24 hours to do good for nothing was one of the rules they set. You know, you have a pretty finite amount of time. That tends to make people quite creative and think quite quickly when you're told you have to finish this in a few hours. Break the rules. How far do you think you can get? A lot of what good for nothing is about is trying to do things very differently from how you do it in your day job. So what you normally thought you could achieve in 24 hours, maybe you can do something completely different. Be useful when you aren't, move on. So you're splitting into groups here yourselves, but there's no point in sitting with a group of people not being able to contribute. If you find yourself in that position, go and join another team and help them out and use your skills. A finite amount of time here. So there's no expert panels. People say what they love and make the decisions themselves. And finally, almost in contradiction to the very first point, is that it doesn't need to stop tonight. There's been some great success stories as the Good for Nothing movement has kind of evolved as participants have helped these causes post the gig and really got stuck into wider projects. So, where did I get involved? So back in 2012, Good for Nothing Venture were spreading north, I suppose you could say. So they had a few gigs in the southeast, in London and Brighton, but they had their first gig up in Manchester, in the Manchester Digital Laboratory, or Mad Lab. So this is when I first got involved. This took the form of a 48-hour event where I arrived down the train on a Friday evening and I got stuck in all the way through the weekend. So I was pretty much hooked on this idea of Good for Nothing. I thought it was absolutely brilliant to have a side project where I could off-balance my evil that I tried to do during the day. And was really excited to hopefully try and take the project north. So, skip forward to the end of last year, and I was lucky enough to be invited to what was called Camp Nothing. So, the Good for Nothing mothership, as we tend to call them, were basically received some funding to try and spread the word a bit more around the UK and start up some new chapters. So, about 60 people from around 15 different cities in the UK, and further afield in fact, all headed down to a little corner in Norfolk to take part in what was called Camp Nothing. So at Camp Nothing we basically learned how to put on our own gigs, how to track down ventures and people that want to be involved, and also like some free stuff. But the real important part was to get your community involved and how you could bring people to rally around this Good for Nothing cause. So I've got a little video which I'll show you, which is just hopefully give you a little taste for what Camp Nothing was like. Just listening to the video here, 1 second.
That's a mystery in the air.
I went along to one in Manchester. But that's the way you're leaving, that like we should be using the skills that we've got and the abilities that we've got to help out.
If people come forward, they've volunteered, they want to do Good for Nothing where they live, they want to build their own version, their own local flavour of it.
Oh yeah, nice to see you. Yeah, you made it.
So now, this is where it all gets interesting. Let's start doing some stuff.
I'm going to be starting the Birmingham chapter of Good for Nothing.
We're setting up a chapter in Camden.
I'm starting the Cardiff chapter along with a couple of other people.
I'm starting the chapter of Good for Nothing in Colchester with a few friends. My personal reason for doing it is I don't want to die having only used my skills for making money for other people.
I'm kind of interested in doing something that's more meaningful than kind of day-to-day work, so kind of giving something back and helping people make stuff.
I'm doing the Rotterdam chapter, but I think a lot of cities will follow if they see what's happening in Rotterdam.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a wee taste for what Camp Nothing was like and the kind of people that get involved with this. This is us on the final night where we had a party where we all wore silly hats, and I guess that kind of just sums up the feel of the whole event. It's not too serious. So as a result of this weekend, the Good for Nothing is now a global movement, not just in the UK. So there's now chapters in Cambridge, Cardiff, Nottingham, Leeds, Camden, Rotterdam, Perth in Australia, Sydney in Australia, and 2 of our newest chapters, Glasgow of course, and here in Edinburgh. In fact, there are over 30 chapters on a slide, which isn't going to work for me. But that's fine. Not a problem. You can look them up on the website, it's not a big deal. So, what makes Good for Nothing more than just another clumsy creative designers meetup where we all talk, or basically an unpaid day out of the office? Well, there's a few things that we kind of hold pretty dear to us at Good for Nothing. So, the first big one is doing, not talking, doing with a capital D. We've got a small amount of time at our gigs, and it's really important that we work really hard for these social adventures to actually produce something that they can take away at the end of that event, and it's not just talking about the things that we could do. What's the point of having a group of 20, 30, 40 creative minds together when all we do is talk? Collaborate and experiment. So, because Good for Nothing isn't your day job, it gives you that real chance to do things that bit differently from how you would stuck in an office from your 9 to 5. And it's probably one of the main reasons why I've got involved with it. It allows you to try out maybe that technique, that design that you wanted to do, which you haven't been able to get past your boss or get past a client, or just work in a completely different way that the people you normally work with aren't willing to do. Everybody needs a side project. So the third part is, I guess, all about the ventures. So supporting true innovators. We're quite specific on the types of ventures we like to work with. After getting a little bit more involved in the kind of social ventures community now, there is a lot of people out there. And we have to kind of be discerning over the people we lend a hand to. So we tend to target grassroots organisations, so people who are just starting out, who without our help wouldn't be able to get to that next rung on the ladder and really put their plans forward. But they've also got to be causes that are doing something differently. It doesn't want to just be another charity that's providing money to another small group. It has to be looking at the problem in a different way and coming at it with an idea that could completely change things. So a few examples. How it should be, which is an alternative supermarket down in Brighton, I think it was. So they had this idea where they wanted to give an alternative to the big 5 supermarkets, but also highlight the bad practices that they sometimes do in terms of wasting food, sourcing food from outside their local community. So Good for Nothing helped them out in one of our gigs. So in the space of 24 hours, produced a marketing PR plan, put designs down for their first retail space, including a floor plan, designed floor space pods, display units, along with a bunch of technology that can be used in the store. So thanks to that hard work, How It Should Be is now a real functioning supermarket, which you can go in today and is functioning. So I think they launched at the end of last year. So without the help of Good for Nothing, we would never have got to that stage. The next project was the Family Cafe, which is based in Nottingham. So they had they'd already got up and running with a social eating experiment, they called it, where basically they used a lot of the food that is wasted by supermarkets, so whether it's thrown out because of it's past its sell-by date or it's slightly damaged, but used that food to help feed families that were struggling with poverty, food poverty, and yeah, really just struggling to get along to feed their family. But they did this in a community way and a social way, so that these groups started to get to know each other so they could help each other out, and they became less and less isolated. So Good for Nothing at the Nottingham chapter, they took this idea and wrapped it up into a toolkit that could actually be spread around the UK. So they developed that into a toolkit with brand new logo, calling it the Super Kitchen. We love puns at Good for Nothing. And along with costings and a full business plan for the social ventures and how they can push that around the UK. And the final example I'll give here is actually from up here in Edinburgh. So we had our first gig in November of last year. And I was talking to a couple of people earlier who came along. So we were working with the Edinburgh Tool Library. So they just kicked off. It's basically a guy called Chris who'd been through to Toronto and seen this idea of a tool library, which is basically a library where instead of taking out books, you take out tools along with the skills to put them into practice. But they'll also help out the local community by helping the unemployed and people that need to raise their skills in order to get a job. So this took place in a pub called Henna, just up the road. But in just a space of 4 hours in an evening. We had about 20 people come along, designers, developers, marketeers, copywriters. I think we even had a dream interpreter amongst us. Anybody can come along, it's brilliant to have all these folk. And in that 4 hours we got them a full logo and identity, which you can see here, a marketing strategy, and a personalised kind of business to-do step to go towards the library's launch, which will, with any luck, be in about the next month or so. Chris is just in the final negotiations of getting a venue sorted, which is very exciting. So that's a few examples of what Good for Nothing gigs are, who we're supporting, but what does it feel like to be along with them? Well, up in the A-team, Chalajanica, who remembers Chalajanica? Excellent, yeah, that's missing from our TVs. Apprentice, without the, I won't say that. And if you're a bit of a geek like me, look at the Rebel Force, blowing up the Death Star, taking it to the man. But it's also a free party, it's got to be fun, you know? People aren't going to give up their weekends for just dull stuff, it's got to be good fun. So, saying that, who wants to get involved? Yeah, excellent. Well, good luck, because we have chapters in Glasgow and Edinburgh now, who are both going to be having gigs in the next couple of months. Sadly, we don't have any confirmed dates, but if you follow us on Twitter, if you grab your phones, at GFN Glasgow or GFN Edinburgh, or head onto the website where you can actually sign up for updates from both the venues, from both of the chapters. So we will hopefully be having some stuff coming up in the next few months. Pretty exciting times. So that's it for me. Thanks for listening, everybody. There will be some questions around.